Everyone, and welcome to the Dynasty Gambit off-season finale, 21 finale of the Dynasty Gambit. Myself, Kyle Senner here, as well as the fantasy sports doctor, James Ferretti. How you doing, Doc?
I am doing well. Happy Thursday. And yeah, this is it. This is the final episode of the final off-season episode of the Dynasty Gambit. And just real quick, where I am in New Jersey, I'm very fortunate. We had a lot of flooding with the storm that passed through here last night, and I know a lot of people in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area were affected by that. So just want to send good wishes to them and hope that everybody is recovering well from that. It was pretty, woke up last night and this morning, woke up to some pretty disturbing and devastating images around the area. So just wanted to say I hope everybody is safe and is doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. Across the East Coast, both countries really, because I know it seems like it's about to hit the East Coast of Canada provinces. So thinking about everyone there. And yeah, everyone who's obviously the wake of the hurricane in Louisiana, especially. So thinking about everyone in a lot of places. So I hope everyone is okay. And thank you, everyone who is okay, for being in here. Do appreciate that and appreciate all the support, not just tonight, but from all off season. It's a big conversation, Doc, and we plan to keep it going tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully this will be a welcome distraction for all the stuff that's going on in the world, that we can talk a little fantasy football and have some fun.
Yeah, I'm sure if we can help anyone just escape and give helpful advice as well and help them with their leagues, but just to have that entertainment value, even. I don't know how we really are, but anything we can do to help, we'd love to do that.
I think we're entertaining, so.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Entertaining thought there. But anyway, I guess the not so entertaining part of the injuries, and part of the reason we have Doc on is to talk about this and the fallout of all that. So, Doc, I guess two major running back injuries, very recently. So, what are the consequences and fallout of? I guess there's two players we can talk about, really. So, whoever you want to start with, we can talk about that.
Well, I guess we'll go in chronological. Hey, Cody. We'll go in chronological order of when the injuries happened. So we have Travis Etienne, obviously ended up with a Liz Frank injury, and J.K. Dobbins just recently, in the Ravens' last preseason game, tore his ACL. Had a bad knee injury, tore his ACL. So let's talk about Etienne since his happened first. And I think there's a teachable component to this as it kind of unfolded. He went out with a mid-foot sprain, which is essentially what a Liz Frank ligament injury can be. So for anybody that's watching that and is playing fantasy football, foot sprain or mid-foot sprain is kind of like a big red flag warning. And it sounds like kind of innocuous at times. It's like, oh, he sprained his foot. And it's like, that doesn't sound so bad. Well, the worst type of foot sprain is a Liz Frank injury, which, as we saw with Travis Etienne eventually, once he got some imaging, which, by the way, his initial x-rays were what? Negative, right? And it's like everybody breathes a sigh of relief. And then the next day, he's out for the year. So two lessons there, really. X-rays are negative, doesn't really tell you that much. Not a reason to have a false sense of security there. And foot sprains can be really bad injuries. They cannot be, but the worst kind of foot sprain is the Liz Frank injury. So without getting into too much detail of what it is, it's a little ligament that's in the middle part of the foot that kind of holds the whole foot together. And if that sounds important, that's because it is. And if you injure that, or if you tear it, you need to have surgery to repair it. So that's the bad news. Here's the good news. He's getting surgery today. There's a high success rate with these types of injuries. And I have an article from the American Journal of Sports Medicine from back in 2016, where they studied a group of NFL athletes, and more than 90% of them who sustained Liz Frank injuries and needed surgical repair were able to come back and play in the NFL. It was anywhere from 8 to 11 months later. And it was offensive and defensive players. The important thing is performance after they came back, no difference, no statistical difference. And length of career, no statistical difference versus control. So there's a greater than 90% chance that this does not hamper him going forward in any way, shape, or form. So I like those odds. And that's significantly different than what we talked about with Cam Akers and his Achilles injury, and how the outlook for that is much less rosy, not just for next year, but, potentially for the rest of his career. So big difference there as far as, the way to kind of process this injury and deal with it.
Yeah, I think so. For you referenced it as soon as it came up, but Cody through Facebook mentioned telling us hello. So first off, thank you, Cody, for joining. And Cody, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know in the chat. Answer yours and anyone's questions who want to ask us. That is the primary purpose. So talk about Etienne. So okay, well, let's go to J.K. Dobbins and talk about that situation, and then we'll talk about the total fallout and actionable things both afterwards. So what is the situation with Dobbins? Because we hear an ACL tear, but I've also, did he damage more than just the ACL as well? Can you confirm that for us, Doc?
I can't confirm it. I think that's the suspicion. The interesting thing is that they really just kind of said he was out for the year, and then everybody just kind of stopped reporting on it. So, and then later on, it was like, presumed ACL tear, and that was kind of my experience. And I heard some speculation that it was a more complex tear, a more complex injury. But I looked it up today and I couldn't get anything confirmatory. So I think it's reasonable to suspect that he damaged more structures than just his ACL. But I don't have confirmation on that at this time. The good news is it probably doesn't matter. And I think if you want to think about it conceptually, I think we pretty much put him in the same bucket that we put Saquon Barkley in. And Saquon Barkley had a complex ACL tear. He tore his ACL, he tore his MCL, he tore his medial meniscus, and they all kind of run together. And that was back in week 2. And it looks like he's going to be okay for week 1 this year, which is kind of what we've been thinking the whole time, despite what was coming out of Giants camp about that, he's going to start out slow and things like that. Probably looks like he's going to be able to play. So I think there's a really good chance that J.K. Dobbins' situation is going to be very similar to that, where he's out for this year. He gets a surgical repair. And his timetable for that would put him back sometime in April or May. So plenty of time in the offseason to do offseason workouts, training camp. And we should know more as the season goes on. But that's kind of the situation that, I'm looking at it as. And even if it's a complex tear of his ACL, I'm not any more worried about it really than I would be with when Joe Burrow injured his ACL, when Saquon Barkley did it, when Odell Beckham did it. Like, if you play fantasy football or you're familiar with football at all, people tear their ACLs. It's not an uncommon injury. And we have seen plenty of examples of people coming back and being really productive afterwards with really no major limitations.
So, on the scale, we've got Cam Akers with the Achilles tear. You've got Etienne with assume is a Liz Frank injury. Where is the scale for Dobbins and that ACL tear? Is he closer to Etienne, closer to Akers, or is it kind of right in the middle in terms of expectability and safety recovery from the injury?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think him and Etienne are really close, and it's really on the good side. We're talking really high percentage chance that he comes back and is not affected by this going forward. There is, because he's so young, and I don't know if he had an ACL or any other kind of knee injury when he was in college. I know Todd Gurley had multiple ACL injuries, but there is a risk of earlier onset arthritis in the setting of post ACL repair and things like that. And because he's so young, because he's 22, maybe that's something to consider years down the road. But it wouldn't be something that would affect me thinking about him next year and going forward for either of them. I think they're just lost for this year, and next year they hopefully will be able to just kind of pick up and achieve that same type of upside that we were hoping for them both this year.
So I'm looking at just Dobbins. I quickly did the Sharks now has the injury predictor history as part of their website.
Okay.
It looks like 2 injuries, really major injuries in his career up to this point. One was a leg fracture, so it looks like he broke his leg in high school. Okay. So that 2016, we're talking 5 years ago. So I mean, I'm not an elite athlete, and I remember I broke my, I guess it was my fibula, it was my tibia, and I think with good rehab, like I think by 13, 14 months after the break, I was maybe stronger than I'd ever been. I was still pretty young.
Nice.
I was basically a teenager at that point.
Is there a good story behind that, or is there
skiing?
Okay,
I don't know if it's skiing.
It happens, right?
Yeah. I definitely know that for sure. It was the first day of the year, so I remember it was December. Is the second I done one hill down. It was my second pass down and done for the season. So, for an ankle injury, it looks like in a bowl game in 2019. There's a high ankle sprain. 2019. So this was. Bad, but I guess this was before. This is like as a senior, I guess before his draft class coming out, and I don't remember seeing much limitation. He didn't run the combine. I remember that he didn't run the combine because he didn't have combine measurements.
Okay.
I kind of dropped him behind Taylor because Taylor this guy destroyed the combine. We don't really know about Dobbins,
right?
But I mean, he played week 1, so ankle injury.
Neither one of those gives
nothing
me
ACL tear.
No, none of those things give me any kind of concern.
No prior history of ACL tears. So yeah. Okay. So how about so compared to Etienne and Dobbins are closer. If you had to invest in one right now, and this is Dynasty Gambit, so Dynasty. Obviously, I think we drafted. It's another question for both. But who are you investing in? Who would you rather invest in, Etienne or Dobbins?
Oof, that's a good question. This is the honest answer. I would take either one of them. Like I think they're both amazing talents. And I'm good with making a play for either one of them. For Cam Akers, a little bit of a different story. We talked about that. But I would, when the time is right, which is probably going to be in the shorter term, as opposed to in the offseason when these guys are doing their rehab and there's Twitter videos of them running the drills and everybody looks great and all this other stuff, then the price is going to go right back up. So that's the thing. It's like if you're gonna go for them, you have to kind of, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but it's like I feel like this is you approaching your window. Maybe not right now, but we're getting there. Because once they start rehabbing and hearing about rehabs going well and they're looking good, then the price is gonna double. That's my thing.
Yeah. I agree. I think if you want to acquire them in season. It doesn't have to be right now, but I think in season their players are producing points is what could make those managers who have Dobbins and Etienne kind of loosen up a little bit.
Totally
so in terms of actionable advice, what I can take from just comparing Akers to Etienne, I had a league where I had Akers. I sold him for a 21st. And in the startup, this was a startup this year, I managed to accumulate an extra 2022 first. So I have my own pick, and that's probably going to be a high pick. My team is not looking good right now, but the other first I had was looks like a team that's ready to compete. So I sold that second, so a 2022 second for Etienne. So basically, the way I've exchanged Akers for Etienne, and I've moved what looks to be a late 2022 pick into 2023, where I now have 5 firsts in that 2023 class. Trying to get another. I've got offers sent out right now to try and get the 6th one. I want at least half the 2023 first round. But just the idea was, I feel like that was a smash victory to get what I view as a better pick and player in those 2 trades, going in the opposite direction. It's giving up a player for a pick and then giving her a player, even though both are hurt. Agree. So it doesn't hurt. Me getting Etienne doesn't hurt potential to get the 101 with my own pick, right? Like so this team, I guess, right. Mike Davis is my RB1, so that's the Akers injury was detrimental to this team's ability to compete. I felt so I just totally blew it up. But that's just kind of an example of what I've done so far. Trying to get away from trying to buy Etienne, and I believe it was my first dynasty share of Etienne, so my only one. So this is a chance to get a player. Maybe it's going to cost more than a first next year if he comes back, like you said. But I think at any point in season is where you want to make that move.
Yep, totally agree. And I'm with you on that. Like that's a smash victory for you. Like regardless of how it turns out, like you can't tell the future, but like the process behind it is very sound. So that's kind of how you play the game, and I support that 100%.
And I think that you can make if you're a competing team and there's a player that's like a super this player is about to lose tons of value. But I don't want to sell them just for picks because I'm competing. Like I'm not afraid to make that move if I think this can buy me another player. I think I probably mentioned that before in the show, but like you can go sometimes to go backwards to make that move forward. If you want to get a specific player, selling another player might not happen. So you have to sell that player for picks and sell those picks to get that player you want. So that's something as contenders. Sometimes you're fine selling a player as a contender, knowing that what I'm using in terms of the picks I'm getting is just to help me towards contention.
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. So if you see a player that even if you're a contender, you think this player is going to lose value in the offseason, if I sell now and get the best value, I can still use whatever value I acquire to help me contend, even if it comes in the form of a pick at first. It just, especially if you're active, if you're in a league where there's a lot of trades, like that type of mentality is common to have. Churning, constantly be looking, even if you're contending, still making moves to get picks to help those picks contend. So don't be allergic of picks if you're a contender. That's kind of the point to all that.
Yeah. But I like that. And even as somebody, we're very far apart on this, which is why I think it's interesting, because I'm not a big trader. Like I don't enjoy the churning and the burning, and it's just not something that I do. But I can see now more the value of acquiring those picks, even if I'm, in order to make a move, in order to give yourself more flexibility. Like it's still an important thing. Whereas in the past, I might have said exactly what you said. Like, I'm a contending team, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I'm just not going to make a move. I can't do player for player. I'm not going to do it. But to your point, if you get a pick, you can turn that pick into a player, and it's an extra step, but that may be the way, that may be the road. There's not just one way to do it. There's multiple pathways to get to the point that you want to get to, and maintaining that flexibility, I think, is important as dynasty players, even if it's not something that's inherent to your league or inherent to your preferences, as it were.
And again, you have, like just what you're saying, multiple paths. Generally, you're going to have multiple managers to be able to trade with, right? I mean, certainly in season winners and the rebuilding teams really set themselves up and are super obvious. You can kind of go with the team that's you and find mutually beneficial trades where you can gain value and not have to give up too much because you're both looking for the opposite things. And so, you don't always have to just hold yourself to just one man specific player. Use the size of the league to your advantage. And I mean, the downside of 16 team leagues are, depth is stretched more. There's less good players on each team, but it also means there's more managers to trade with. 12 team leagues. Okay, the rosters are better, slightly less managers to trade with. You have 11 other managers to trade with. So if that one manager you can't see eye to eye with one player you want to get, go look for a similar player from one of the other 10 managers and find the best deal.
That's a good point.
So there's just some general trade strategy that we traded in the topics for that. But I guess so other injuries we can talk about, sticking with the skill positions, Hilton, and then maybe a name. Remember, it's a little tired of in Dynasty. He's above 30. He's a receiver. No one wants to hear. I mean, it's still someone that could have maybe been the Colts' number one receiver this year in terms of receptions. Targets will not be the case likely, but what do we know about the Ty Hilton injury?
Yeah, so this one it's kind of being underplayed a little bit, and it's one of those things. Disc injuries and neck and back injuries can be tricky, and I talk about it in chapter 7 of my book. Go into a lot more detail, which I'm not going to go into here. But the thing is, he's on IR, so he's out a minimum of 3 weeks. There it is. Thank you, sir. So he's out for 3 weeks, but the thing is, even though it doesn't sound like a major procedure, like recovery from herniated disc repair can be months, plural. So, the short story is, given all the unknowns with him, redraft and dynasty, I'm just going elsewhere with this. Like, he was already kind of like a double-digit round, like end of the bench type pick. And in dynasty, like, his value was really low anyway because of his age. Which is not to say that he couldn't come back and be productive. I still, am probably higher on the offense for the Colts than most people, and he was included in that. I really thought that him and Carson Wentz could actually like make something happen. But this could be it for him. Like there's a non-zero chance that he just, he has a complicated recovery from this. The surgery doesn't fix the issue. He's out for months. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen, but nobody's saying that now. What they're saying is he's on IR and we'll see what happens in 3 weeks. There's a decent chance that he just doesn't come back from this in that time frame or anything reasonably approaching that. So for me, there's no shame in moving on at this point if you have better options. I mean, as much as I like to be the optimist and say, hey, I think this could work out. I mean, I was like, the stand for like Le'Veon Bell and Jared Goff and people that are just like cast aside by the fantasy community. But, even I have my limits. And, as much as I love the guy and as successful as he's been, like I said, if you have better options, probably take them in redraft and dynasty at this point.
And so I think with dynasty, I don't think anyone would say he's a buy right now, because even if I think if you want to wait to make sure he's healthy coming back, wait to see what he looks like, because you said it, Doc, his value was already pretty high. So he comes back healthy. It's not like his price is suddenly skyrocketing. Right. So if you want to buy him, you're going to have tons of opportunity this year. So I wouldn't go buy him unless he's out there producing.
Yeah,
know what you're from him. So don't even wait to see him play a couple games and see, does he aggravate something before buy. Because at that point, it's still going to be so cheap that you may as well not even worry about whatever pick you're giving. Hold that pick, the liquidity of it. You may, whether it's another player with that pick or packaging a few picks to get a better player. I would hold whatever pick that is until he's producing. I think the actionable advice now would be, if you have Hilton, I think that's more where we could focus. If you're saying move on, are you saying outright cut him? You're if you can get a high backup running back or fourth string running back that made a team, would you just be okay?
I don't know about fourth string, but if you feel like there's somebody who's got anything like backup or anything reasonable, depending on your team needs. I mean, obviously, if you're stacked at running back, then you don't necessarily need a seventh running back, but if you have a better option, something that's going to help you out in the short term, and you could potentially carry him forward, like a running back that could end up with a role either this year or next year, then I'm saying move on, just because he's replaceable. Like, his value that he's going to provide this year is replaceable, and his value going forward may be limited or zero. And it's sad, but like I said, there's no shame in moving on at this point. And just because they say 3 weeks with IR, that's just how long he's going to be on IR. That doesn't mean in 3 weeks he's going to be back. There's a real chance he's not back in 3 weeks. So that's the other thing. It's it's not a 3 week hold and then he'll be back. It's a 3 week hold and we'll see. And that's a long time. It could be months.
Yeah, I think, just the new injured reserve rules, which they implemented last year, keep them maybe forever now. I know, was it Stefania Bell? I think it was the episode you got about, right? On the armchair. She was kind of saying, once they start implementing these types of protocols and this type of injured reserve flexibility, teams probably aren't going to want to go back to it. I'm sure players, for the players who are forced to be on 6 week injured reserve and their injury isn't that long, they're only 4 weeks and they're good to go those 2 weeks, those players want to get back playing.
Yeah,
that's why they're in the league to play. So from the PA perspective, I think the PA likes this rule, and the teams, the managers, the coaches, the flexibility, knowing they can put a player on IR and it doesn't have to take out 6 weeks. So the minimum is now 3 weeks. IR, they're missing 3 weeks. They can't be activated sooner than that. But like you said, that's just the minimum. There's no maximum. And I think they've also changed the rules on, there's the minimum for the IR, but you can wait quite a while after that period before activating that. Even though they have him designated to return, like you said, there's a chance that he misses the entire season. It's going to wait to see how the recovery is. Has he undergone surgery yet? Or are we still even waiting on that?
I think he did. Yeah, he had his procedure already. And, it's speculation here, but this is what we do. Speculation is herniated disc. They did a minor disc repair, and, they're just kind of see how it goes. But, they can be complicated by so many things, which I'm not going to get into. But the bottom line is that this is really a wait and see, but it's high risk, low to moderate reward at best. And that's just not the way you want the scales to tip for you. It's I'm all for high risk, high reward, or even better, low risk, high reward. But high risk, low reward, that's not the way I want to play it.
No, I agree. It's tough to see upside with him at this point. it's kind of back to Michael Dynasty wise. Michael Thomas has some upside to offer next year.
Yeah,
I just think this year his upside is totally capped, which is what I'm saying. Like I have one league where it's the RSO format, the contract, and with their formats, you put a player on IR, it's permanent. Like you can't. I know in one league where we actually, and this has to be done manually. The commissioner has to like manually do this. We have designated to return injured reserve. So we have a group chat. You have to declare in the group chat who that is. But if the league,
the state of Senra declares that Cam Akers will be on injured reserve.
Yeah, well, no, he is definitely not a designated to return candidate. So like in that format, I put Thomas on reserve knowing I'm not going to get him back this year, which is, I think there's high risk on it. And I don't know if the reward, I think higher reward than Hilton, but still not high enough reward. And I did it before the auction draft we just had to save salary cap. And I thought it was worth it because that extra salary was like 16 million I saved. Got me Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, that's significant. So, it makes a lot of sense.
I'd rather have Gibson than Thomas, and that would have been, like Thomas and like $8 million in extra cap space. That wouldn't have really got me a great play. Like, maybe Mike Davis. I'll have to look at what Mike Davis were, but like I'd just rather Antonio Gibson, honestly. So, so that was kind of my thinking with Thomas, and it'd be a similar thinking with Hilton, but even more extreme. So, I'm fine cutting him as well from a dynasty roster. I'm also okay holding, just because there's chance he plays. So you may as well, if you've got the roster spots for it, you may as well hold and see what happens until he returns. If you've got a league where you can put him on IR temporarily and reactivate him, that also makes sense. I think the fact that he's on IR is key to that because you're not burning a roster spot. Like in most leagues, you should be able to put him on injured reserve. I know some leagues will be very stringent. Like they have to be on NFL IR to be on our IR, but if he gets activated and he's still out, if your league allows him to stay on IR, you can hold him there for a while, maybe even the whole season, and then worry about it next year, see if he signs, if he retires, right? So I don't mind. But I also, if you really need that roster spot, the value of the roster spot is, I think, something that's super important. I'm okay cutting T.Y. Hilton, which is crazy to say. And just saying, word up Gambit from Will Harris. Shout out to Will and the amazing shirts from Viridian Global. Will is
Viridian Global.
Will co-owner of that. Yeah, so I love these. Women do rock, and so I love the Scott Fishbowl shirts. Crush. Thanks, Will. I know Will also does the Jet Sweep show. So Doc, you, me, and Will, we all have something in common. Monday nights, we'll go pregame Monday nights here on the Going for Two Live network, which I guess is a good time to plug that. I know plug outside the company, but the Jet Sweep show's on halftime of the Monday night game. So tune in pregame here on the Going for Two Live network, over to the True North Fantasy Ball network at halftime on Monday nights to check out the Jet Sweep. That's always great. So if you want to watch Monday Night Football too, go ahead. But I think the real good content's and halftime. And Gymnastic from the Gold Jacket Pods. Good to see you, Jim.
Hey, Jim. How are you? Thanks for watching.
So, Doc, talk about Trey Lance now.
Okay, this one will be pretty quick. It was interesting because Stefania talked about this as well. Stefania Bell talked about this on the Armchair Show, and it was like she kind of broke something a little bit. I think she broke Jeff's heart more than anything else. But she basically said Jimmy G was going to be the starter week 1, barring like if he got injured. And then it turns out that kind of out of the blue, Trey Lance shows up with a chip fracture in his finger. So the question is, where is the chip? Is it at the end of the finger, in which case it doesn't really matter much for anything? Or is it near where one of the ligaments attaches, which might take a little bit longer to heal? Either way, I'm not really concerned about it. I don't think it's a real issue. It just might keep him out for a couple of weeks and, buy Jimmy G some more time. The only downside to this is I think Stefania made a really good point about Trey Lance not starting, despite how talented he is. There has been a lot of talk about him still being raw and, wanting to give him some time to develop, which I think makes a lot of sense and is something that doesn't really get a lot of credence by a lot of analysts, that there's more to it than just talent. Like there's coaching preferences. Veterans in the NFL still get an extreme amount of deference. And you really have to be stinking up the joint in order to kind of get shown the door. And that's why it was so surprising when Cam Newton got cut, because I was thinking along the same lines there, that he was going to end up being the starter just because he's a veteran. Whether or not he lasted the whole season, completely different discussion. It turned out we were wrong on that one. But Jimmy G is going to be the starter, and this might buy him a few more weeks. And the thing is, if the 49ers are winning games, Trey Lance is going to stay nailed to the bench. That's just the reality of the situation. So that it buys a little bit of a higher percentage that Jimmy G could be the starter for longer. That's really the only takeaway. So we're delaying the Trey Lance show a little bit, probably because this finger is going to slow him down, but also we're giving Jimmy G a chance to win some more games. And if he does, he's going to remain the starter until he's not. So
would maybe Trey Lance have some more time to figure NFL? Yeah. So I do have a question here from Jim, and from Gymnastic. Golden question, actually. Before we get to that, I do have just a quick question about Lance.
Yeah.
Because he's not, the delay starting, does this knock Lance out of the top 12 dynasty quarterbacks? Was he top 12 to begin with? But if he was, does this knock him out, or you still keep him inside your top 12 dynasty?
Yeah, that doesn't change anything for me. Like, he's definitely he's still in the top 12. Him and Fields, even though Fields isn't starting, he's not starting. Doesn't move the needle for me at all. Like, this finger injury doesn't move the needle for me at all. So
I agree. Both top 12. I mean, it was low. Like, I could maybe go as low as 11 for Lance, but it's tough to envision him any lower than that. It's all top 11 right now. And again, Deshaun Watson would make it a really solid top 12 if he was playing. But like that top 11, really a lot of young quarterbacks. I think the oldest one's pre-Dak, Russell Wilson, I guess. But for the most part, that top 11 is really a young quarterback. So, maybe Lance moves to the end of that group, but I don't see him dropping further. Let's ask, let's answer the question that Gymnastic asked us. So, or just kind of observation: window open to sell Jimmy G. Now, I guess sell how much? I mean, in a back league, he's probably not worth anything anyway. But okay, so let's assume Superflex, just where he actually will have some value. I'm trying to think back, and this is this contract salary league I was talking about. I sold Jimmy G to get. Let me try. I can't remember if I think it was just Jimmy G alone, and I got a package of players that included John, Christian Kirk, and Philip Lindsay. Now, Christian Kirk's just on a 1-year contract. Like, I think this is the end of his rookie contract, so it really is just for a 1-year guy. But I get Josh Palmer at his rookie contract, and salary cap contract leagues, those rookie contracts tend to be a lot cheaper. Like, we have whatever the salary cap of the NFL is, $188 million salary cap, and Josh counts for just over $1 million this year. And I think by the end of his 4-year contract, it might get $2 million, maybe just over $2 million. So it's super cheap. And I think the idea was, I'm pretty sure it's Garoppolo in the last year of his contract, and giving it to someone who kind of, I believe that Drew has Carson Wentz, and they might have Watson as well. I think they trade anyway. Quarterback situation not the greatest for that team, even though the rest of their team is super solid. So they really were looking for someone to hold start. And for me, my team not really looking to, kind of in a bit of a accumulating, even if I couldn't get a pick, the next best, because that team was deprived of pick, of like a 2023 fourth. Like, that's the team that's been like going for it the last couple of years. They 2 years ago, so like they just don't have much picks at all. But I thought the best is a rookie, like still on a rookie contract. So that's kind of what basically, like, what I got out of that deal was Palmer, really. Like the Christian Kirk was more just to, that team's up against the salary cap, so they were actually giving me Kirk back simply so they could have enough money left over to make. The essence was basically just Garoppolo for Josh Palmer. And basically he was a 3rd round pick in this league. So Garoppolo for a super flex 3rd is I sold. I don't know if you're getting a 2nd even at this point, though. So I don't know that the window that much more, because everyone is still thinking Lance is going to start at some point. I think the window more is if like you said, Doc, if the 49ers go up, like let's say they start, that probably buys Garoppolo the rest of the season. If you're doing that good, they probably, even if he tails off at the end, you'd have to get eliminated from the playoffs for Lance to start. Yeah. So like if he gets that where he's going to be at least starting for the fantasy playoffs, that's where I could see someone give up a second. But even now, we still don't know that Garoppolo is starting the year for sure. Saying he'd take a third, like you'd take a third to sell Garoppolo.
I think you can get
that's
it.
That's obviously what I just
you couldn't get it. You couldn't get it before, but I think you can get it now. And if that's what you want, I think that offer, it's got a chance of being out there. Whereas 4 days ago, yeah, exactly. 4 days ago, Jim, you got nothing. So now the opportunity is there in the sense that the window was nailed shut 48 hours ago, and now it might be open a little. It might be open a little crack. So
because this trade I made giving up Garoppolo was maybe almost a month ago. Sometime in August, I made this trade. So it's pre-news of in his finger, but again, this was a manager that was desperate for a quarterback that like just needed a starting quarterback, right?
Mitigating circumstances.
So you also have to find the right manager because not everyone to give up a third. But if there's someone in your league, maybe again, I target specifically he came to be, but like the Carson Wentz manager is someone to target. Heck, whoever has Trey Lance. Like that might be the person most willing to buy Garoppolo is the Trey Lance insurance. So with this news of Lance getting hurt, maybe this is the go look at the Trey Lance manager and see what they're willing to buy for Garoppolo. But yeah, I'm kind of I think we're all kind of agreeing. If you can get a third for him, do it. Because again, that third, even if you're competing, that third can help you as part of a package of picks to buy a player. Yes, or heck, like old receivers, like Ty Hilton, right? Like not Hilton, but that same vein, same age, similar production. Like those receivers can all be got for third. So if you give up Garoppolo to help you with your, like even if it's just to get a wide receiver, it's something as easy as that. Like that. So yeah. Were there any other injuries that we missed you wanted to talk about in particular?
Yeah, I'll hit on these two real quick just because they happened. Irv Smith, meniscus repair. Right. Out for 4 to 6 months. So he's essentially done for the year. And the reason they did that is because, some people may say, why didn't they just take the injured part of the meniscus out? And the reason is because you need the meniscus. The meniscus is a shock absorber. So especially for a young, active guy, and he's only 23, you want as much meniscus as possible to be a shock absorber and to function. So better to opt for the repair and take the longer time. Expected to have a really, very high percentage chance that he has a good recovery. Again, we're in the 90% range with these. So successful repair slows the development of arthritis and is going to allow him to be functional, explosive athlete. So I think we just have to put his, the Irv Smith hype train, we just got to put it in the garage. We don't have to dismantle it. We just have to kind of put it away for a year, and then we can bring it back out next year. Really upgrades Tyler Conklin's situation, who's already getting some buzz with Irv Smith being completely healthy. And now Chris Herndon's kind of in the situation too. So he gets one last chance to resurrect his career out of New York. So we'll see what happens there. And then Giovanni Bernard just came out today that he has a mild high ankle sprain. The only thing I want to talk about with this is I'm a little more worried than they're kind of letting on. They're saying now he's going to be ready for week 1. And it's not an issue, but they said the magic words. They said high ankle sprain. And we've talked plenty of times about what a high ankle sprain is, how multiple sets of ligaments are involved, and how it's a really, large area of tissue that's injured. And I know I'm like talking about the book and, lots of people don't read books anymore, but all of this type of stuff is in the book. This is in chapter 5, laid out in explicit detail about how to deal with high ankle sprains anytime they happen. But we got 2 sets of ligaments involved. We got a lot of tissue in between. So it's a little disingenuous to say that a high ankle sprain is mild, because that's kind of like saying you have a mild gunshot wound to your chest. Like that may be true, but it's still kind of scary. And normal time frame for a high ankle sprain is 4 to 5 weeks. Maybe this is an exception and he beats the time frame by a couple of weeks. If it's really a high ankle sprain, there's reason to be concerned that this could hamper him, for at least a few weeks. I'm feeling much better about Leonard Fournette's chances of being involved in the offense earlier. If I'm doing best ball drafts, so I have him on a dynasty team, and he was going to be nailed to the bench. But now at least he feels like a flex option if Giovanni Bernard's going to be out. Maybe even Rojo gets a little receiving bump for the first few games. So it's something to continue to monitor, but I wouldn't take it at face value that he's definitely going to be back week 1, like they've been saying. So that's really the only teachable thing there, is that there is really no such thing as a mild high ankle sprain. You either have one or you don't. And if you have one, it's not good. They're just varying degrees of bad. So that's the takeaway that I want to leave everybody with that.
The worst variety of high ankle sprain bad is out for the season. Like if you had suffered this, even right before week 1, you could legit miss 4 months.
Could be done. Yeah. Right. We've seen multiple players, have issues with that, or they come back and they try to gut it out and it really just hampers them all year. And even somebody like Calvin Johnson, who to me is like one of the best wide receivers that I've ever seen, dealt with high ankle sprain injuries, and he was a shell of his former self when he was doing that, as opposed to doing all the things that we've seen him do and drop 40 burgers on people like it was his job. And when he was dealing with high ankle sprains, he was basically just running down the field in a straight line, and they weren't even throwing him the ball. So it can really hinder you.
Well, apparently, if you get like Jim's saying, you've hit 3 guys in a row that I have on a team. Like if you have all 3 of them, that really hinders your team. But I do like what you're saying, Doc. Like the immediate bigger, I think, like the big success to come from Tampa with Bernard out is probably more on Fournette than it is on Rojo. I agree that Fournette gets the bigger bump. It seems like he was their preferred option as a passing down back over Rojo. So,
Jim, you gotta get the book, Jim. You gotta get the book. It's gonna help you. I promise.
So Irv Smith, and I mean, I've never been. I mean, so like Jim's heartbroken about Irv. We know Jeff Lambert, the big boss here, going for 2. He's heartbroken about Irv. He's been calling the Irv Smith breakout every year of Irv Smith, seems like. Crazy to think that, like, he's only 23, and this will be his 3rd year in the NFL. Third? Yeah, kind of crazy. But third, what do you do with Irv Smith? Like, how much should this affect his dynasty rankings? If you're already low on him, I guess not much. But like, let's go with Jeff or Jim, presuming they had them as top 12 tight ends.
Yeah.
How, like, for this injury, for someone who considered Irv as a top 20, does that pull them out of the top 12, top 15, top 20 even?
No, for me, it doesn't really change anything. The only thing that it changes, 22 leagues is a lot, man. I don't know how you're pulling that off, Jim.
Gold jacket for you, Jim.
Yeah,
you
for real. It doesn't move him for me. The only thing that makes a difference is, are you competing this year? Like, were you counting on him this year to be your starting tight end? If yes, then obviously you got to make other arrangements, and you might have to make that hard decision of, do you at some point during the year move on from him because you need to put another piece in place to try to win a championship. If not, then I think it's exactly what you were talking about. You stick him on IR, and you just, same thing with ETN, Dobbins. I think it's unlikely somebody's going to come with a Godfather offer for him like they would with one of the other 2, or at least a high level offer. So I certainly wouldn't sell him for peanuts at this point. If you need to make a move to fill the tight end position, then do that. But it doesn't move the needle for me, because we're talking 90% chance he's going to be back and just as functional next year. The only caveat to that is seeing how good Conklin and Herndon do there this year, because there was already some issues. A lot of the assumptions about his breakout were going to be that he was going to be the guy, because they had Kyle Rudolph there last year. Kyle Rudolph got injured at the end of the year. Then Irv Smith kind of took over and he blew up. And it was like that extrapolation over a whole season is what everybody was getting excited about. That still needs to be in place in order for his breakout to occur. So if Tyler Conklin has a breakout this year, if Chris Herndon somehow has a pulse, then he's going to be right back in the same situation he was potentially when Rudolph was in town. And that wasn't great. Like, he was kind of like a low end tight end too. And as talented as he is, like, opportunity share is important too. So that's really the only caveat to the situation.
I just think that's a good offense for the tight end. In theory, it would be, right? Because they do run 2 tight ends. They run them mostly to run the football. So
it's not
such a run-heavy offense at the time.
Yeah, it's not a high passing.
And the tight ends really haven't been targeted much in the offense, even when games where they are passing a lot. So I always felt the upside was never that great anyway. I'll be honest, I think the hype around Irv Smith and the value, he's so young, he's only 23. He was a second-round pick, I think, in the NFL draft. That all still exists. So if his price hasn't gone down, I'd be selling like hotcakes now. If his value is maintained through this injury, because I've always felt his always outweighed his production. So now you might as well. It sounds like
he kind of felt that way anyway. It just reinforces that.
And I mean, it wasn't going to be much production, but at least it was going to be something. Now, if it's a 0 and the value doesn't drop, it's even more extreme. So I'd be looking to sell right now for whatever I can get. Really, got a good question. How do you feel about a guy like Everett to replace a guy like Irv?
I really like that.
Now, if we're just straight up talking about production, like I'm replacing Irv's production with Everett, I almost think I have Everett ranked higher than Irv before this.
I have Everett ranked higher as well.
Production, so I don't mind that. I don't see any drop off at all. Now, if you're talking, I'm trading away Irv Smith to get Everett. I guess it's all about opportunity cost. But the thing is, like Everett, he was also like a high draft capital, young, came into the league young, like really good athlete. What you see on the field this year, fairly healthy with Russell Wilson as his quarterback. It's a run-heavy offense too at times. It's actually really similar situations to Irv Smith.
Yeah, very similar, but a lot less competition for Everett than Irv Smith potentially. And you get production this year as opposed to not.
I think where the lack of competition really comes in is the running back. Dalvin Cook's probably, even if Irv Smith was healthy all 17 games, my bet would have been Dalvin Cook would have been third on the team in receptions. Yeah. They don't have that Chris Carson. They don't seem to throw to the running back as much in particular. And I think that, Jefferson we're going to get there is just like Metcalf and Lockett are always going to get theirs, but it's who's the tertiary targets there. It will be more towards the tight end anyway. So honestly, if I'm fine trading away Irv Smith and Dynasty for Everett. If I can replace production, because Everett's pretty young. He might be 25, 26. We're only talking 2-3 years younger. Tight end position where guys play into their 30s. That's not that much of an age difference. So if the move is selling Irv Smith to get Everett back in a deal, I'll do that in Dynasty. I'm willing to do that. Apparently, Jim's saying, and I know he and Connor. Again, at the Gold Jacket Pod, they just divisional series. They're quite in tune with all the divisions, what's going on. But he's saying Russ was raving about Irv. I think
Irv was pick 50
in the NFL draft, right? Yeah. So pick 53 would be a second round pick, a late second round pick. So so Doc, do you think Everett will be third on the Seahawks this year?
I think it's certainly possible. But I'm with you. Just to summarize the thought process, I had Everett ranked higher than I had Irv Smith going into this. Now that Irv Smith is injured, the chasm has gotten wider. So to answer Jim's question, I'm all about substituting Everett for Irv Smith. I might have even considered it if Irv Smith was healthy. And now that he's pretty much out for the year, then it's a slam dunk for me. So that's where I'm at with it.
So now,
what reasons you said?
Now even this. So, are you willing to add to Irv Smith to get Everett? Are you willing to give up Irv Smith and get Gerald Everett?
I mean, you know me. I don't really think about third or fourth round picks too much. So it's sure. I get in a second. I think that's when it gets maybe a little pricey. But only because the opportunity cost of the second is you could probably get something pretty nice for that at some point during the year. The third is probably not going to get you that much.
Exactly, I'm thinking that too. I don't want to overspend on a tight end necessarily, but if it costs me a little bit more to move to get Everett and again keep that production going, I'm fine with that because I view anything outside of the top 6 tight ends really it's all interchangeable anyway. So give me the guy that'll be healthy and producing. Give me the points. Don't have an elite tight end. Now, one of the things we want to talk about was players to keep an eye on. And I know going back, I think to our Jimmy Garoppolo conversation, talk about just what you can get for a third, right? If you can sell Garoppolo for a third or buy basically any old 30-year-old wide receiver that's producing, and like Marvin Jones Jr. And I think that's actually a perfect one. I mean, he's 30. He might lead that team in maybe receptions. Receiving yards might even be like maybe not even receptions. I know Ron's here going for 2. He has projections, and he has, how did he have it again? I think he has DJ Chark leading the Jags in receiving yards, but Chenault leading them in receipts. But Marvin Jones actually has the most fantasy points because he leads them in touchdowns. So
yeah, I like that.
That might be the key. So Marvin Jones might be a guy to keep your eye on and buy for a third. So in that same, who's your guy this year to keep an eye on in fantasy and Dynasty in particular?
Well, let's you want to go like by position?
Sure. I didn't really have that many prepared, so yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I got a couple, and we could talk about it. So let's start at the quarterback position, and I love what you said about Marvin Jones too, a classic unloved veteran there. So the guy at quarterback that I think should be getting more love or is a player to watch is Sam Darnold. If we think about it, he's got CMC, he's got 2 really good receivers that folks are high on. He's got an ascending young stud talent who had an amazing preseason in Terrence Marshall. He's got a good pedigree, good draft capital, good talent. Could a lot of his issues and people's kind of reluctance to trust him be like Adam Gase related recency bias? I mean, if we're so high on all these other players in the Carolina system, why aren't we higher on Sam Darnold? Would it surprise me if he ended up being like a high to mid-range QB2 for somebody that you can potentially get it for very low costs? Like that to me is really intriguing. So that's one guy that I'm thinking about.
And okay, I wanted to end the episode with this. I've recently made a couple of trades involving the same player, and one of the players in one of the trades was also Sam Darnold. So we'll circle back to Darnold later, but another player, more about like me trying to sell this player away. But yeah, I like that. I like that call. And I'll summarize my point later. We'll talk about that trade. I guess in terms of quarterback, I think quarterback's difficult. I think the way like the top 12 is so set, and I think a lot of the QB2s are really intermingled. There's a lot of quarterbacks with like dynasty risk beyond season, so they're all kind of bunched up, and it's really of who you think will produce most. So I don't know. I don't really, quarterbacks keep my eye on. I don't know if there's anyone really hidden from.
I got another one. Move on. I got another one real quick.
Okay.
And I think he's got 2 more years potentially, but I got to throw something for Hamid, for Jared Goff. This is just a classic unloved veteran. I don't think his value is going to be lower than it is right now. His expectations are so low, like his price is in the basement. So for what it takes for you to get him, he could be a starting quarterback for 2 years. If he finished in the mid QB2 range, would that surprise me? No. Like the Lions, I mean, Hamid loves to talk about how bad the Lions are going to be and how crappy their offense is and how like he doesn't have McVay anymore and all this other stuff. But the Lions are probably going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, just as a team. They're going to be behind a lot. So I see a scenario where Goff could volume/garbage time his way to some really nice weeks. So that I don't think is getting a lot of credence out there, and everybody, it's like it's chic to shit all over the guy, and he's a former first number 1 pick, and I think he's been scapegoated a little bit now that he's out of LA, and all the problems with LA were kind of heaped on him, and now that he's out of town, like it was all his fault. Like I'm not so sure that's the case. Like I think he could be a lot better than people think.
Okay, so I won't say the episode because it's funny because another player that's involved in this trading away of a certain player, another player I received in exchange was Jared Goff. So let's actually just talk about it now that we're on the same quarterbacks. Jameis Winston. I mean, he's been named the starter.
Okay.
But one of the things I'm still worried is the touchdown upside. How often are we going to see, especially when they get into the red zone, Taysom in either keep the ball and run it, or maybe he's catching it from Winston, but I think Taysom Hill saps some of Winston's upside because, Winston as a rookie ran rushing touchdowns. I'll have to check it, but I don't think, like the rest of his career combined, I don't think he has 6 rushing touchdowns. It seems like that was a 1-year thing as a rookie trying to figure it out in the NFL, and avoid turning it over, strangely, because it seems like the rest of his career that's not been the case, but like that's not, so if he's not throwing those touchdowns, I think the upside's low with him. So one thing I was trying to do is in both of these dynasty leagues, or one of them was a startup this year, but the other one was I've a startup like 2 ago, and I've kind of held him. So I held him through the he was a backup with the Saints last year, held him through all that, kind of, didn't want to sell him for nothing. But now that he's kind of rebounded a little bit, he's been named the starter, I thought it was enough in price to sell him in that league. So so I had 2 dynasty shares of Winston, and I've got rid of both. So I don't have him on my team anymore. I don't have to worry about Winston anymore. I don't really like him as a human. Don't really like his football play. I don't have to worry about it. So 2 trades. So one was chronologically. So I sold Jameis Winston and DeAndre Swift. In exchange, I got Jared Goff, Joe Mixon, and a 2022 second.
Okay.
So really the key there is the pivot from Winston off, thinking more stability. Again, the volume. Maybe Goff those more touches and just based purely on volume. So I think quarterback production wise, I'd actually rather have Goff, even though most would say they'd rather have Winston. And there it's getting older at running back, but for it by still getting a pick. That's kind of what my mentality was of trying to get that package of Goff. And the second, it's a competitive team. So like getting Mixon for points is good, obviously.
Yeah,
I like 4 years older at running back, but makes up for it with the second. So that was my thinking. I know I put in a couple of chats, and focus as it was, people tended to prefer the Winston Swift side there, but
I think that's kind of more by the Swift hype train more than anything else, which is not unreasonable, but you did get a lot of value there, and you divested yourself of some risk. And I think that's a really good point that people are not taking into account. Like they just assume that because Winston's a starter now, that it's static and he'll be the starter for the rest of the year. Here's the thing. If Jameis comes out and throws 4 picks in week 1, there's a decent chance he's not starting week 2. So there's a non-zero chance that could happen. He could also get hurt, but they're losing games. Like the whole reason that he was the starter is because he looked really good. We've seen him look really bad. And if he starts looking really bad, it ain't going to take a whole lot for Peyton to go back to Taysom Hill, because I think deep down he wanted Hill to win, but he just couldn't sell it to the team if he made Taysom Hill the starter over Winston, given how they played pretty close. But Winston looked a lot better in the preseason than Hill did, and he had the support of the team. So if they start losing games, that support is going to go out the window.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it week 1, and the team maybe wouldn't buy it week 1. But if it gets in season and you're not winning games with Winston, then they'd be more open to the team will be behind it if you make that switch to Hill. So that's a good point there of where, like, again, even if Winston starts the whole year, I still think the touchdown upside is capped by Hill being there.
All the other things you said are true, and there's also a realm to it being the floor being even lower than that. Like, so the logic is really good there.
Because they're not going to use Taysom Hill. Like he's there.
Correct.
They're paying him $140 million. I know most of it's avoidable, but like he's there for a reason.
But he's essentially $60 million. But he's going to be involved. Like he's always been involved in some way, shape, or form. He may be involved more now because you had a Hall of Famer that you didn't want to step on his toes before. That is not the case. Nobody cares about stepping on Jameis Winston's toes at this point. So if he's not performing, he's gonna get phased out pretty easily.
So then again, another Winston selling to get Sam Darnold. So this one is on one side, Jameis Winston, Adam Thielen, and a 2022 third.
Okay.
Other side is Sam Darnold, a 2023 first, and a 2022 second. So the crux of the deal, the way I see it, is it's Winston for Darnold in a first. It's also Adam Thielen and a third for a second. So making that second to third swap for Thielen. And it's all packaged together in one piece. So again, Winston, Thielen and a third on one side, Darnold a first and a second on the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm learning from this whole show, if I had one thesis takeaway, is don't make trades with Kyle Senra, because he's going to find he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, folks. So I really like that trade. I mean, obviously I just, espoused Sam Darnold's praises. Plus you're getting a 2023 first on top of it. Yeah, I mean, you laid it out really well. Like I would be all over that one. I think I like that one better than the other one. Like the other one, I think was closer. I still think you win the trade, but it's closer. This one, I think is, it's pretty heavily on your side.
That first is so juicy. It's my fifth first in that 2023 class, so I've definitely been targeting it.
It's going to be interesting.
This is again that let's talk about where I sold waivers and got Etienne, right? So this is all part of that. I've just been fire selling. Like I sold Daniel Jones for a 2023 first, Akers for a 2023. Anything I could get to accumulate first in 2023, I did.
Yeah.
And was willing to move a 2022 first to get a player back. But yeah, really trying to get those 2023
the round of Senra. The first round of 2023 is going to be known as the round of Senra says.
Yeah, I think I right now I've got an offer out for Teddy Bridgewater for a first. Okay, he's been named the starter.
There you go.
Can I get a first for? I don't know if that one's happening. I've sent it out to a couple teams already with it being rejected. So I'm going to see the quarterback, maybe the more quarterback needy teams, and see if I can get a first for him. If not, that might be one where I just kind of hold him if I'm not getting the price I want.
Okay.
So those are two examples. But so we can get back to the players to keep it. My running back is pretty easy. Everyone knows it. It's Jermichael Hasty, really.
Okay.
And if no one knows who he is by now, take this advantage of this opportunity. And that's what I really wanted to go for, was name a player that people might not. So he was a UDFA from the 2020 class, which is an amazing running back class. And out of that, he actually made the active roster last year. He's made the active roster again this year. He hasn't been on a squad yet. So this is a UDFA that's just 2 years in a row. A deep 49ers backfield with a lot of running backs, a lot of veterans who've played in the NFL before. And he's he's beat out a few guys. Like this year, the surprise one was he beat out Wayne Gallman. Wayne Gallman got cut.
Yep.
And honestly, of there, Mostert, Sermon, Elijah Mitchell, Jermichael Hasty is the best pass catching profile. I thought Gallman really the only one that would stand in his way of being the designated pass catching back for the 49ers, which is not really a high productive role, to be honest. They really don't throw it much to any running back, but I feel like if they're going to with anyone, it's probably Hasty. I think he's already ahead of Elijah Mitchell. And I've never been a big Elijah Mitchell fan. I've always preferred Hasty talent-wise. And so it looks like he's going to be the RB3 to start the season. I think once Jeff Wilson's, I think he's on the PUP list, so after 6 weeks he'll be eligible to return if he's healthy at that point.
Right.
Which complicates it a little bit. That might force them to Mitchell or put him on the practice squad. But yeah, I think I had Hasty 49ers RB2 in Dynasty. I still feel like that holds. I really don't believe in Mostert. I'm a big, I'm not the biggest Sermon fan, but I do think the value. I was, Gerson kind of mentioned this, kind of a chasm between Sermon and everyone else. I know you kind of disagreed more, Doc. You seem higher on Mostert, but I just think.
Well, you were kind of in the middle. Like Gerson was all the way on one side. I was closer to the not super excited about it, and then you kind of split the difference. Maybe you're a little bit more excited. Because I'm not. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Sermon fan, but I think I agree with Gerson in that dynasty value-wise, it's Sermon, and it's not even close. And that's why I don't buy season number 2, because I don't really view Mostert as having that much value at all, or even Gallman at that point, or Mitchell. Yeah. So I think Sermon is just so much more value than everyone else, but I'm also not the biggest Sermon fan that I want to. Yeah, I get it.
I like Michael Carter more than Sermon, and I know Gerson doesn't. So that's kind of where we differed. But yeah, so I'll just say I like Jermichael Hasty. Everyone should know that already. But for those who don't know, he's a UDFA who's made the 49ers roster 2 years in a row. So he's gained NFL experience. There's nothing that they don't like him. They clearly do like him. I remember he was one of the first UDFAs taken to, so as a priority. He still keeps making the team, and so I expect
there's something about him, active. And he's not on a lot of people's radar. So I think that's a really good call out for somebody that could end up having a role in this kind of free essentially.
You might be able to get him off waiver wires, right? And if you throw a fourth to someone for him, you'll get him. So the guys I love to attain, running backs with a chance that are just dirt cheap. So that's keep an eye on Jermichael.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah, no, I definitely like that one. So mine is not going to be as obscure as that, but that's a high bar. So I'm going to go at running back. I'm going to go with James White, Mr. Reliable. Now that Cam is gone and it's the Mac Jones show, I think James White can see a resurgence of his role. as the pass catching back. Last year he was, 42, number 42 in PPR scoring. The year before that, he was number 18. And then the year before that, number 6. Now, I don't think he's getting there, but at the end of the year, if he was a low RB2, I think that's very much a possibility. And, again, acquisition cost very low for somebody that can give you, RB2 type numbers, especially in PPR leagues, with the receptions.
Because he's probably the third most expensive back in that backfield. Like, it'll cost way more to get Damian Harris, probably cost more to get Stevenson. So,
absolutely.
He's the cheapest.
And price is shot up, after the preseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And a single quarterback league, I just drafted him at the 211. That was maybe when did that start? That was I think 2 weeks ago. So even now, like, he might have gone hot. Like, if we redo that now, even 2 weeks later, he might be higher than that 211 spot. So
yeah.
Okay, so then I guess talk about wide receivers now. Who's a wide receiver that you think people should have their eye on?
All right. So I just have one name. I have one name. So some of the other ones I could think of a couple of people. There's one that really stuck out to me, and it's Michael Gallup. This offense, as it is right now, can sustain 3 wide receivers. He's playing for a new contract this year, either in Dallas or somewhere else, a la Kenny Galladay and, things like that. But here's the other thing. If something happens to Cooper or CeeDee Lamb, oh my, at a very reasonable acquisition cost, he could really take off and smash his ADP. I know we've talked about, I think I mentioned him at least once or twice, but I think that his floor is kind of like low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3, but he has legit upside like way beyond that. And, in leagues, even dynasty startups, I forget, I know I drafted him, but I think it was in like the 9th, 10th round, something like that. He's a young guy. He's only 25. He's just been completely overshadowed by the other 2 guys there. And I don't think he really should be. So that's my guy.
I have a Michael as well, Michael Pittman. And maybe the number 1 receiver there, but he's going so cheap, especially with Hilton out now. Like, it's, Pittman and Paris Campbell, like, it's almost a 50-50 coin flip of who's going to be the number 1 wide receiver there. So I'd say even both. Like, both guys really aren't going that. They're really not that expensive. And so, question here from Blue Crew, who I believe was on the joined us for press coverage on Monday. So appreciate that, right. Blue. We're not sad about it in Blue. Feeling pretty happy that we get the support. And a good question here. So, half point PPR, 12-team super with a 2 QB option. Should you always start a second QB at flex? First time playing in this format is what he says. So, I think the answer to should you always start a QB, I think that question depends on the scoring settings. Most conventional scoring, which will be a point every 25 passing yards, 4 or 6 point per touchdown, maybe -2, maybe if it's 6 point touchdown -4 for interception. Even in those formats, you probably always should. I think in the scoring formats, you might shy away from playing a quarterback in the superflex spot is if you start getting into negative points for incompletions. I feel like the leagues that try to do that, where they give points for completions and give negative points for incompletions, that they're trying to widen the gap between who are the good quarterbacks and who aren't. Then it's really like, okay, if you've got 2 of those great quarterbacks, always play them. But if you don't, then it's where you can get the argument of, okay, I think this quarterback's going to be heavily sacked this week. They'll take up too many negative points. There's more upside with a running back or wide receiver. So I think that would be the format where you would start to question it, is when like negative points per incompletion. And I've seen them where some leagues are it's -1. Like, so quarterbacks at 50% completion, that means like half the time they're losing a point. So like those leagues where it can get like, you can easily see quarterbacks score negative points, where I wouldn't. But if there are no negative points for incompletion, no negative points for sacks, there's much less risk at the quarterback position and just so much upside. With the passing yards, if they 3-4 touchdowns, the upside is just so great. It's really tough to replicate that. And who is that? What are you putting in the flex spot? Right? I think that's the question. Because like if you've got 2 stud running backs, like they're going to be in your lineup every week. They're not replacing your quarterback in that super. Comparing to who's my RB3, or who's my wide receiver 3. That's really where you're starting to compare. Is it worth playing the quarterback? And again, if you've got like 3-4 flex spots, suddenly then it's, okay, I'm comparing to the wide receiver 5, the running back 5, because a few other guys are already going to be in those flex spots. So I think there are instances where you wouldn't, but the way I approach any super flex, whether it's redraft or dynasty, I'm approaching it that I always want to start a QB in that second super flex spot. So I'm sure I've got 3 solid starters to cover my bye weeks, or maybe even 4, right? Like I'm extra aggressive on quarterbacks and super flex. I think that's where all the value lies, and every other position is less important. So that's kind of my spiel there, Doc. I guess I can give a long-winded answer. So
it was good. I want to touch on something that you said, and interestingly enough, I heard this on Press Coverage, your show, Press Coverage, early on in the year. I wish I could remember who the guest was, but it was relatively early. It was like 3rd, 4th episode. So Blue Crew, if you haven't checked out Press Coverage with Kyle Senra on the Going for 2 network, definitely worth looking into. Go back and watch some old episodes. But the guest that you had on said something that has stuck with me, because this was months ago. He said, show me the league settings, and if I understand the league settings, I'll win every league that I'm in. And I thought that was really—
That's definitely Scott Connor.
Really,
I don't even have to think that hard. That was definitely Scott Connor. I've heard him say stuff like that. He's super smart. There's a reason I brought him on. It was
really impactful, and that's exactly what you said. It's like you have to know your league settings. So to answer the question best I can, in most non-exotic scoring superflex leagues, you're going to want to start a quarterback. The only caveat to that is if there's some league settings like to get a little crazy. Kyle and Gerson like to play in these leagues where you need a master's degree from MIT in order to understand the league like bylaws. Like, I don't have that kind of time. So it's like I went to medical school and I still am like, oh, it's too complicated for me. So that's the only caveat. If it's not that situation, then you're going to want to start a quarterback. Otherwise, there may be a tipping point there where you're like, okay, now like my wide receiver 5 and my quarterback 3, because he's inefficient or he throws a lot of interceptions or a lot of incompletions or whatever, they're going to be pretty close. And maybe I don't want to, start the quarterback against like Washington football team or Miami or something because, he could get negative points. Unlikely that's going to happen in a regular kind of vanilla Superflex format.
And so Blue Crew apparently appreciates the answers we gave.
That's for you. Yeah, he appreciated your answer. I don't know if he appreciated my answer, but I just reiterated your answer more succinctly.
Well, I appreciated your answer, Doc, for being what I had to say. But hey, he says, great answer, brother. Great show, guys. Keep up the excellent work for us fantasy addicts. Yeah, we try to. And
thanks for watching, buddy.
Yes, this is the off-season finale of the Dynasty Gambit. It is converting to the Thursday night Gambit. I'll be back hosting. I know Doc and I will be migrating more towards Monday nights, but Going for 2 live in season should have. So it's basically every day, I think. Every day of the week, there's going to be something. So 7 times, there's 7 different shows throughout the Going for 2 network. We'll have the Monday night preview because I'm pretty sure someone is doing a Tuesday night like waiver wire show. Yeah. And then the armchair show on Wednesday.
Armchair.
The Thursday show, Helmet will be hosting. Friday night, DFS, Jeff and the armchair guys again. And then I think Saturday, I believe they're doing the DFS pawn shop. So Clay, who was our guest a couple weeks ago, they're doing that. And then Sunday morning, Hamid again, Gladys, Gerson, they're getting everyone set up for Sunday morning pregame. And then again, Monday night, we're on, Doc. So it just cycles through the week relentlessly. This is all kicking off really next Wednesday. So
really
6
soon.
Days from now.
Yeah.
With
really
that armchair show. Apparently we kick butt. I won't, for Jeff's sake, I won't swear, even though it's the end of the episode, we're probably fine for that. So tight for time at the end, Doc. Is there any tight ends that you wanted to keep your eye on?
Yeah. We'll hit on 2 real quick.
Sure.
So first one, I talked about him already, Zach Ertz. Mended the fences in Philly. His stock might be up a little bit, but his price is still way down. The exact same thing that happened last year could happen again, except him being on the other side of it, where Goddard was getting drafted high, Ertz was getting drafted high, Goddard was getting low, and then Goddard outproduced him. We could go into bizarro world this year, and the exact opposite thing could happen. Just keep in mind, Ertz has finished as a top 5 tight end twice with Goddard there. So there's so many pathways to him being a top 10 tight end. He gets traded. Hurts gets replaced by one of the other QBs that they have that favor the tight end. Devonta Smith gets hurt. Goddard gets hurt. That's a lot of upside at a really low price. And then the last one, maybe this is my favorite one, because, I love Kyle Pitts. I think he's going to be amazing. I know you don't like him as much. I think he's going to be amazing. This has nothing to do with that. But Hayden Hurst, on a lot of snaps with Kyle Pitts, we're seeing him lining up outside and being treated as a wide receiver. He might not be direct competition for Hurst at tight end. Hurst was tight end 9 last year with 56 catches, 571 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He could certainly do that again with room for more, and he's going well into the double-digit rounds. He might even be undrafted in some leagues. I know I'm doing best ball leagues now, and I'm getting him with my last pick. So, that to me, to get a potential top 10 tight end with the last pick, got Dynasty
startup. He was round 21. We were just talking about that. My co-host Brad on the Full Press, he took him, 21st round. I think, to your point, Doc, if Pitts succeeds, he can away more from the receiver, specifically Russell Gage, than he is tight end if he's lined up so much as a receiver. Hurst is going to play his natural tight end role, going to be on the field a lot at the same time as Pitts. So I like those calls. Really, both of them. Okay, so we talked about going out and trying to trade Irv Smith to get Joe. I think these guys are even more attainable than Everett. Even with Irv Smith potentially missing the season, if you went to the Zach Ertz manager right now and offered them Irv Smith, you could probably get Zach Ertz and maybe even the same with Hayden Hurst. I mean, Hurst, that might be a little bit trickier just because he's a former first-round pick. He's still, in the prime of his career, a little younger, although he was a little older as a rookie, basically the opposite Smith. But I'd try and look for that. And I'm trying to accumulate those trends and get the pick back as kind of a way to make up for that youth. I think those are almost the trades I think I'd rather do. Rather go out and get another younger guy like Everett where it might cost more. Yeah, I'd be looking to flip Irv Smith, Zach Ertz plus Irv Smith to get Hayden Hurst, maybe Hayden Hurst plus. So those would be back to the Irv Smith conversation. That's kind of what I'm looking for to sell for Irv Smith.
The numbers are misleading there. Real quick, you mentioned it. After number 6, as far as the tight end list, as you go from 7 to 20, it's they're numbered. That's a big range. But as far as actual production and points per game, if I took the tight ends 7 to 20, wrote all their names down, jumbled them up, and then rearranged them, it probably it's just as reasonable to say that could be the outcome than the original way. So it's Irv Smith and these other 2 guys are in that discussion. There's a reasonable chance that either one of these guys or both could have outproduced Irv Smith at baseline. So you're getting essentially the same type of player with the same risk profile, and you're getting something on top of it. So, I agree. When you're in that glob of tight ends, just go for the one that you get the best value, whether it's low acquisition cost or if you can get a pick back on top of it or whatever. You don't want to invest too heavily in anybody that's not named, let's run them down. Not named Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, Hawkinson, Andrews, or Pitts. Anybody that plays tight end that does not have that last name, do not invest too heavily in them. And you can make arguments for any of those guys, but they all have their pros and their cons.
Yeah, I think from a redraft perspective, I'm kind of avoiding that next tier, that whole range. He's going in the 6th, mostly 7th, 8th, 9th round. Those are all tight ends I kind of want. So from a redraft perspective, I'm looking to either, like you said, go in those top 6 guys or wait till the 11th, 12th, see who gets me there. Because I feel like those guys will produce the same level that the guys in the 7th round will.
Yeah, I'd really going to be close. And you're going to be happier that you spent that 7th round pick on somebody like, Jerry Jeudy or Odell Beckham or,
I'd rather go after a quarterback in
that range. Or a quarterback. I think Herbert falling in there, he's there.
I had a redraft league where I got Dak in the 7th. Aaron Rodgers in the 7th, perfect. I think is that's going to happen too. So I'd rather go for those elite quarterbacks because I don't if that the Brady positions.
Rodgers.
Yeah, exactly. Herbert. I mean, you bring a little later than that too, right? So you could maybe get Jeudy and Brady rather than go for a tight end. So I think it's a lot of great advice. Hopefully, we've given a lot of great advice throughout the offseason. So real quick, the doc at TFS doc, and for those the fantasy sports doc. That's what you're looking for that Twitter account. Injuries suck, but fantasy team doesn't have to. Is the book. So Doc, anything else you want to plug for the listeners? Viewers.
No, let's just show a copy of the book one more time. There it is. There's a link on my Twitter page for the book. I know people don't read books anymore, but it's not that thick. Like, you can get through this. This is going to help you all year. Buy a copy, put it in the bathroom. You'll get through it in a week, and you'll be really happy that you did. Leave your phone, put the phone down, read the book. I think it's going to be really helpful. So that being said, there's a link on my Twitter page. There's the e-version. You want to keep your phone, you want to read it on the phone, do that. Get the paperback copy. I think it's going to be really helpful. I really encourage people to check it out. That being said, I just want to take a minute to just say how much fun this has been, especially as somebody who's kind of new to Dynasty. I really learned a lot from being on the show. I really appreciate the listeners. It's nice to be able to come on here and say goodbye to the off season. But the good news is we're saying goodbye to the off season because in season is coming, and we're going to be doing that really shortly, and I know we're all excited for that. Want to take a minute to not just thank the listeners, but thank Jeff Lambert, the big boss man, for the opportunity, and also you and Mr. Senra and Hamid for being such gracious co-hosts this year. I'd like to thank all of our guests for being on here, which we had a multitude, not the least of which was Gerson Aguirre, G, who was very flexible and very apt to fill in for us when we needed a bonus speaker or a bonus host. So thank you for all you guys. Thanks for the listeners. Thanks for listening and supporting us and supporting the Going for Two and Going for Two Live network. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Really trying to grow the channel as much as we can. You can find us on a lot of different platforms, but if you happen to be watching us on YouTube, take a minute. If you like this video at any point, if we said anything that was useful, if you think I'm wearing a stupid shirt, you don't like my haircut, whatever, leave a comment, drop a like. It all helps us out. And subscribe if you haven't. It doesn't cost you anything. We really appreciate it. It really helps us out. And that's it. And I'll see you guys on Monday night after week 1. We could sort through the carnage together.
Yeah, true professional there, Doc. Plugging everything. So not much left to see. I'm on Twitter at Senra Says. Again, I'll be on Monday night alongside Doc, alongside Gladys, who was a guest of ours last week here. Dan the B League Says I'll be there too. So the Monday night crew getting back together. That'll be fun.
Really excited for that.
Again, check out everything Going for Live Network, and again, this Thursday time slot will be filled. The Thursday night Gambit, I think they're going. Hope Hamid will still be here as a familiar host, but some new faces there. So look for that next week. Really, like 7 days from now will be that the premiere for a few of the people Going for Two Live Network, including a couple of the hosts on the Thursday night Gambit. So definitely check that out. I encourage everyone to follow along. I'm super appreciative of the opportunity. Doc, Hamid, you had a stand as the co-host and brought me along for a good, and after that I just like I want to be part of this, and yeah. And you guys were nice enough to add in and let me come on here and because I enjoy talking Dynasty, I enjoy playing Dynasty, and got a lot to say and a lot to share, and I've learned a lot from you, Doc. Reading the book and just last 10 months talking with you on Monday nights, and now through the off season here, I feel like I've learned so much, and you're such a great person, and it's always you bring not only the injury analysis, but a good positive energy as well. And then that can't be overstated enough. So again, really appreciative of you, appreciative of all the listeners we'll plug his Twitter account. If you want to go follow Jeff Lambert at JeffLam7, at Going4_2 for everything Going for Two, at Going for Two live shows that we'll mention. Once the season kicks off, it'll be 7 days a week. So look forward to that. But again, that's in season. This is the end of the off-season version of the Gambit. So again, shout out to Doc, shout out to Hamid, shout out to all the guests, Gladys, Eric, sure. G, so many people coming through and providing insight, helping us out. So to everyone, and on behalf of Dr. James Freddy, I'm Kyle Senra, signing out for the Dynasty Gambit.